Republican reboot. The GOP is looking at the results of the 2012 election like it's an autopsy. Today, we're sitting down with Indiana's Republican Party chairman to get his take on the report and where the Republican Party goes next to reach out to voters, and his thoughts on some of the big issues facing the General Assembly right now. Plus, our political insiders debate on this edition of Indianapolis This Week.
From RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
Welcome to this edition of Indianapolis This Week. I'm Jenna Coy. This week, the Republican Party is taking a good, hard look in the mirror at itself after the results of the 2012 election. The report was released Monday to approximately 50,000 GOP members. A tough presidential loss and a Senate seat reduction, including Democrat Joe Donnelly's victory in Indiana, are pushing Republicans to reach out. A Pew survey shows more than 6 in 10 Americans think the GOP is out of touch. Among the changes in future elections, the plan calls for limiting the number of primary debates, shortening the primary calendar, and moving up the party's convention date.
As it makes clear, there's no one reason we lost. Our message was weak. Our ground game was insufficient. We weren't inclusive. This is an unprecedented thing for a national party to put their cards on the table face up. But this is what we're willing to do to build our party.
The point simply is they're trying to get a facelift when, in fact, this party needs an organ transplant.
Well, joining us now is the chairman of the Indiana Republican Party, Eric Holcomb. Holcomb was a longtime aide to former Indiana Governor Mitch Daniels and has served as chairman for the last 2 years. Eric Holcomb, thank you so much.
Good to be here, Jen.
For joining us. All right, so first, was this so-called autopsy a wise move? Doesn't it draw attention to losses and make them seem even larger than they were?
No, I think there's much you can learn from victories and defeats. On the presidential front, obviously, we came up short. We need to learn from those lessons. They were painful, but there's no harm in a little self-inspection and not repeating mistakes that may have been made. And the only way you can do that is to do a deep dive into what really happened, and that's what we did.
Should you do it before the election season, though?
Well, you should constantly be doing it. You should be doing it every year. So if anything, this is long overdue. And I'm just most encouraged that our national chairman, Reince Priebus, said that he wanted as much input as he could possibly get. There was no, messages sent that I don't want to hear about that or I don't want to hear. It was just the opposite. It was what's on your mind, why did we come up short, and then let's constructively work through this so that we don't repeat mistakes that we've been making. And the facts are what they are. So I'm actually excited. This is something that you mentioned that I worked for our former governor, Mitch Daniels. It's something we did every day, every week, every month, every year. We didn't rest on our laurels when he fixed the BMV. But the other thing is that while a lot of the focus has been on the presidential, the Republican Party got a lot right as well. And we have 30 governors in the country. We have 26 states Republicans have control of both chambers, the state houses and the state senates. We have supermajorities in many of these states, including Indiana. So we're doing some things right, and we're doing some things that we need to improve on.
So you seem in favor of this autopsy. What about your peers? Were many of them in favor, or was there some pushback?
I think my peers, the folks that make up the 168 voting members of the Republican National Committee, were all in favor of figuring out what went right and what went wrong, and taking a good, fresh kind of reset. If we were to start today, how would we approach this? And that's exactly what we did. So everyone that I've spoken with and all of my involvement, the national chairman, Reince Priebus, came to Indianapolis and spoke to some folks here as well. So they heard from a lot more people than just me about this. And I can just tell you, people were encouraged, relieved, in fact, especially all the supporters around the country that said, I don't want to throw more good money at bad. Tell me why I need to invest. Have you learned from what we just went through? And that anytime you can collaborate with folks about what to do and how to improve, that's a good day.
So what do the Republicans need to do to improve?
Well, we need, I think, and Indiana is a good model to look at, and that's something that maybe it sounds a little self-centered to be a Hoosier, but we've experienced the Republican Party here in Indiana. We've experienced some successes, and one thing I think that Republicans here do a pretty good job of is we relate the issues to people. and we constantly try to do more. This whole year we're trying to engage and invest in communities where maybe I haven't been in a long time as the state chairman. I'm going to do more of that and develop real relationships, not just simple outreach, but actually develop sincere, genuine relationships with people. And I think if you can get past the numbers and get it back to people or taxpayers, good things will happen, and they have here.
What about appealing to younger voters? It seems like sometimes that's a disconnect with Republicans.
Yeah, that's been something that I've been very passionate about. I continue to go to college campuses, and we have to do that, but you have to be able to relate. You know, we have a record debt, record deficit spending. These are all things that will adversely impact young folks when they graduate from college or graduate from high school and go try to find a job. But relating that debt anchor to their future, we Republicans have to do a better job of saying this is why it matters to you that we live within our means and that we pay down our debt, that we have a AAA credit rating, because you'll better be able to find a job. And so, yes, we need to reach out to more younger people, and you have to go where younger people are. A lot of, you know, just back to the self-inspection, a lot of the times, maybe we don't spend enough time on college campuses because we think, they might not vote for us. Well, we need to go anyway. And we need to take our message there and say, let's have a dialogue. Let's talk about these issues. And many times I leave. I was just most recently up at Purdue University talking with some students, and I left learning as much as maybe they did. I hope so.
So then just real quickly, is it a philosophy changes that have to take place, or just the way you implement things, you know, the shorter primary calendar?
That's the bottom line question in all of this to me. It is not, I don't think that the Republicans, we get away from our platform or our philosophies or our founding principles. In fact, I think we need to get back closer to them. But what I do think we need to do is be able to articulate that it's not $16 trillion that you need to be worried about. It's what that $16 trillion debt means to you and your future. And so we have to be better messengers of these issues and the policy positions that our candidates and our elected officials hold near and dear. And so a lot of it has to do with how we talk.
Right, and personalize it.
And personalize it is the exact right word.
All right, Eric Holcomb, thank you so much for joining us. But stay here. We have a lot more to talk about because there are many issues facing this year's General Assembly, and Republicans have control with a supermajority, but there is a divide within the party right now over Governor Mike Pence's push for his income tax break. We're talking to the chairman about his thoughts after the break. Welcome back. Governor Mike Pence is getting new help in his effort to cut what you pay in state income taxes. It's help coming from outside Indiana. The ultra-conservative lobbying group Americans for Prosperity is kicking off a campaign to push for Governor Pence's tax reduction. Republicans in the State House don't have a positive view of the ads, saying they don't think the national organization backed by the Koch brothers realize what Indiana has done in recent years to reduce taxes. And Eric Holcomb, Indiana Republican Party chairman, is joining us again. Thank you.
Good to see you.
So why does it appear that Republicans in the General Assembly are not supporting their Republican governor?
Well, there's some hesitation. The Senate and the House have both said that they want to make sure that when we cut taxes, we do it in a very responsible way. I think everyone agrees with that. Anytime you have big ideas like this, and there are lots of ideas being discussed in the General Assembly, anytime you have a big idea, there's going to be some diverse opinions about it, and that's to be expected. I'm always reminded that in the General Assembly, a lot happens sooner or later. It's just, it usually all happens later, and sometimes in a flurry of the last 48 hours. So I expect to be in a good place when folks finish this session and all go back home to their districts.
But doesn't this ad look bad for Republicans?
It's an outside group that's come in to advocate for their opinion. It's hardly the only place they've weighed in. But again, what looks good about Republicans is that we are talking about what and how many and how much taxes we're going to cut, which is different than a lot of states who are anchored in debt and talking about raising taxes. We're actually all talking about cutting taxes at a very responsible level.
Did you and/or the governor get a heads up that this ad was going to be airing, or you just turned on your TV and you're like, uh-oh, what is this ad about?
No. I had it sent to me the day that it was put out via email, so I guess before it went up on television, but obviously had nothing to do with it.
What was your reaction?
My reaction? Well, I think that we can handle our own business here in the state, but I certainly respect everyone. This is nothing new that folks, you know, we've got Common Core television ads up running right now, and so there's lots of folks that weigh in on different issues throughout the legislature when they're in session, and that's just to be expected. But I think that we'll be able to conduct our business and get to a good place.
All right. So what does Pence have to do to get the support of his fellow Republicans?
Well, he's out, you know, beating the streets and traveling around the state perpetually. Hardly seems like he's stopping. He's in every corner every time I check in, out promoting as he should be. And as are the state representatives and state senators when they go home to their districts for their town hall or their third house meetings. So again, the good news is that in Indiana, we're a little bit different than the majority of the states who are talking about raising taxes. We're talking about how do we get to a good place to where we really stick out as and continue to be a leader in a place that people want to invest their business and money.
All right, bottom line question, yes or no, will we see that tax cut this year?
I think we will see taxes cut this year.
Yeah, all right. So switching topics, another big issue this week in the General Assembly, the mass transit bill. It's facing some of its toughest debate yet, but it seems to continue to make its way through these committees. Where do you see this bill going?
What I like, another big idea, big issue to talk about during session, and that is a very good thing. I'm a big believer in let's take on big ideas. How do we move our communities and our state forward? The good news about this topic is ultimately this says that we're going to take this to the people that it will affect the most, and they'll get a voice or a vote on it ultimately at the end of the day. Having said that, the other side is let's talk about the taxpayer and what this means to everyone. So that is a concern for lawmakers, the governor, everyone concerned, and I'm actually very pleased that we're keeping in mind the taxpayer as we decide how are we going to grow and make sure that our community is a very vibrant one.
What is that tax money going to? That seems to be kind of vague at the moment, too.
That's exactly right. And again, the legislature, this is a long session where we decide how money is spent, I think it's a very good thing that we start with very big ideas, and as time winds down and marches toward the final bell, if you will, you know, bills start out in one form at the very beginning, and they end up, and this bill could, you know, who knows what it will include at the final vote. Buses, trains, yeah, and you know, it's not like government is new to busing or to moving citizens around from one area to another. So, to what extent they'll do it coming out of this session, I'll stay tuned just like you.
All right, we definitely will. Eric Holcomb,
thank you
so much for coming. We appreciate it every time you stop by. Well, next week we'll be joined by the new Indiana Democratic Party Chairman, John Zodi, to get his take on the biggest issues being talked about. After the break, we're sitting down with our political insiders. Don't go away. Joining us now are two of our political insiders, Laura Beck and Abdul Hakim Shabazz. Thank you so much for both of you for joining us. So earlier, we had Eric Holcomb here, chair of Indiana's Republican Party, and we talked about the GOP's autopsy for the 2012 elections. Abdul, what's your thought on that?
I thought it was spot on. If you think about it, since 1992, Republicans have only won the popular vote in one presidential election. That was 2004 in George W. Bush. The fact they lost 92, 96, 2000, albeit we knew what that was, 2008 and 2012. And for people to get mad at people like, you know, Mr. Priebus or Haley Barbour, some of the authors, you know, don't blame the messenger. You know, what you're doing, something is not working. And America's demographics are changing. And if you want to start winning presidential elections, you better start figuring out what went wrong.
Do you agree with having an autopsy like this, or does it draw attention to the losses?
Well, I think it's kind of a classic sort of Republican solution to fix something. Okay, we let a problem fester and fester and fester, and then we're going to throw money at it and hope it goes away. I mean, I'm almost surprised that it took them this long to do this. But when you are a party that has tacked so far to the right, and you're propping up the Richard Murdochs of the world, the Christine O'Donnells, the Todd Akins, the Rand Pauls, anybody else I'm missing here? to sing in the long laundry list.
Well, Rand Paul actually won.
Well,
so.
but still, but when you're propping these folks up and they are the messenger of your party, and that's what the average person sees, I mean, it's no surprise. I just think that if they want to do an autopsy like this, perhaps their goal is to move some of these people out. I think that just tends to re-energize the Tea Party folks, but clearly tacking to the right is not working for them. They're trying to get that message out there. And, you know, I would have not charged them $10 million to do this. I could have told them this for about, you know, $100,000.
Even half?
A fraction of the cost by Bet Communications.
I'd have charged $12 million.
Would you?
Yeah.
Well, maybe the two of us could do it together.
Yeah, because sometimes you really should pay for your idiocracy and stupidity.
Yeah, it's not a, I mean, it's not a surprise. And I think that, but, you know, turn on the news every night and who do you see? These people who purport to stand for the middle class. Well, I'm sorry, but they don't. So, you know, it's interesting to younger voters.
You see, and the Republican message actually can work. A message of individual freedom, individual liberty, personal responsibility, personal accountability. The message does work because fundamentally that is the American attitude. The problem is in the tone and some of the rhetoric and the vitriol that comes out for issues that really don't matter to a whole bunch of people. When we saw data come out about, you know, almost 60% of the population doesn't have a problem with gay marriage anymore, and anybody under 30, you know, doesn't care. Now, the 65 and 70-year-olds, you know, that may be their issue, but guess what? In 10, 15 years, those guys are all dead.
Here's the issue. They have a problem. They need to do something about it. Will they do what they need to do? I don't know until they majorly change how they operate. If Ronald Reagan were on the ballot today, he would probably be primaried and lose.
Probably.
You agree?
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Oh, my goodness. So exciting.
On that note, we'll move to a different topic. Is Governor Pence's fight for an income tax cut also a very hot topic. Abdul, are you surprised that there is such a fight?
No, and here's why. Early on during the campaign, when the governor was going to announce his 10% income tax cut, lawmakers only got like about an hour's worth of notice. There wasn't the proper vetting that probably should have taken place, the conversations, so that the House and Senate could have had the governor's back. Now, does this mean that there will be no tax cut? I doubt that very seriously. There will be some kind of tax cut. The question is exactly what. And even the Pence people sort of privately signaled, hey, we are flexible. The 10% income tax cut is our preference, but you know, maybe if it comes in, it gets phased in over time, you know, everything is on the table. But here's what's important to remember in this whole dialogue before Laura just jumps in.
I'm ready to talk.
Before Laura jumps in here.
I have my notes.
Think about this. In Indiana, we're talking about cutting taxes while giving more money for roads and more money for schools.
This is such a talking point.
Drive 3 hours and ask anybody in an adjacent state would they love to trade places with Indiana.
This is your talking point, so you don't have to talk about the fact that there's a big fight between your governor and legislator when the Republicans have a supermajority and the governor can't even get his legislative agenda through. I mean, it was
75% of his agenda.
It was but this was his biggest thing. He campaigned on this. I mean, this is what was the center of his campaign. And when it was like the moment when Governor Pence's legislative strategy just jumped the shark. I mean, it makes no sense. I mean, you're going to go out and run these ads by Americans for Prosperity. I mean, I would think that if you've got a supermajority in both houses, that you would at least be able to push this legislation through. It's also a real Washington-type move, I think, and I don't think it's playing well here in Indiana. The ads are horrible. If anyone's seen them, I think Abdul and I and my 5-year-old could probably cut a better ad in our basement. They're terrible ads. They're not going to break through, and they actually copy Mitch Daniels' 2008 ad. So it really, I don't think, is going to, it's not going to really resonate with people, and I think it just creates divisiveness at the State House.
How do Democrats see this? And do they laugh at, like, let these Republicans fight amongst each other? Do they scratch their heads?
You know, that's the thing, I think, that always happens in sessions when you have things like this. You can just sit back and watch them eat each other, for lack of a better word. You know, I think the Democrats, you know, you're going to have John Zodi on next week to talk about some of the things we're doing to be fighting for the middle class. And when you see them fighting like this, it just, I think, reinforces people's reasons why they don't like politics.
Well, first of all, just to be perfectly clear, the Pence people and Americans for Prosperity are not coordinating.
Right. They're not coordinating at all. They just showed up.
Yeah, as you read my gossip column, actually did.
I do read the cheat sheets.
I did my homework on that one.
Politics.org.
Yeah, and there was no coordination. I mean, the Pence people found out they were doing the ad about the same time as the media was.
Is that they tell them to stop, though? But why would you tell them to stop?
But he did actually, when he had media availability earlier last week, said he called the folks at American Prosperity, hey, let's keep a civil, a very positive,
well, then why aren't they listening to him?
tone.
I mean, you would think they'd respect him enough to listen to him.
And that is where I have some serious issues with my good friends at AFP. You know, this is not Washington, D.C. This is not Congress where you can sort of run some of these attack ads and impugn lawmakers, et cetera, because if anything, the lawmakers I speak to privately aren't happy about it and may push back against Americans for Prosperity, which means, ironically, when your mass transit bill...
What do you mean my mass transit bill? It's your mass transit bill, too. Everybody taking the bus together.
Explain how they're tied together in a weird sort of...
In a weird way, Americans Prosperity has been coming out, they had to find a cause, so they came out against the mass transit proposal saying it's a tax increase. You have a lot of lawmakers from outside of Indianapolis, Marion County who are agnostic and don't care, but when they see the Americans Prosperity ad attacking them about taxes, people kind of reacted funny things in funny ways, like, you know what? These guys are coming after me. I'm going to vote for mass transit just because they don't want it. You'd be amazed at what happens in that building under certain circumstances.
Funny thing.
Are you going to let me talk?
Yeah.
I just have to interrupt you. Well, that's what he does. He's going to interrupt you from
That's
now
Abdul's
on.
strategy. Well,
Where's Jennifer? Where's
up
Jennifer?
to date on political news anytime by following our insiders on our Capitol Watch blog. You can find the link on our webpage, theindychannel.com. Indianapolis This Week continues after the break. It is freezing outside this weekend, but spring weather will be here soon enough, we hope. And so, unfortunately, though, well, severe weather season. And this week is the National Weather Service Severe Weather Preparedness Week. It's a good week to check to make sure your severe weather radio is working. So if you don't have a severe weather radio, you can turn your smartphone into one. Just head online to theindychannel.com and download the RTV6 Storm Shield app. You'll find a link on the homepage. Today also marks the beginning of the IndyCar season. It's been 6 months since the last IndyCar race, and the teams are getting ready to race in St. Petersburg, Florida, as the green flag will drop in a little over an hour. You can catch the results of today's race, highlights, and analysis tonight on RTV6 at 6 and RTV6's Sports Extra. That's it for this edition of Indianapolis This Week. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.